It's still winter. It's still cold. It's actually still snowing. So while we're waiting on the warm, come geek out with me. Let's talk about these 5 ordinary plants that you only thought you knew everything about. I'm positive you will learn at least one new thing about each of them. I actually did. So come on, dude, let's grow. Plant number 1, tomatoes. Is actually spelled Tomato. No E. You only add the E when you add an ES when it's plural. They are native to South America and they are made up of 95% water. Tomatoes are a part of the nightshade family, which includes peppers, potatoes, eggplants, and tobacco. There are over 10,000 varieties of tomatoes. They come in red, orange, yellow, pink, purple, black, green, or even white. Their sizes range from teeny tiny little berries to ginormous beefsteak varieties. They are the richest source of lycopene, which is a very powerful antioxidant. Tomatoes were once thought to be poisonous and associated with witchcraft. They were thought to look like a mandrake plant, which is also in the nightshade family. It has a human-like look to the root and is actually very poisonous. It was thought that eating tomatoes might turn you into a werewolf. Also, the rich blamed tomatoes for making them sick, but it turns out that the acid in the tomatoes were causing lead to leach out of their utensils and plates, and the poor, with their wooden utensils and plates, were absolutely fine. To this day, tomatoes still have a reputation for causing canker sores and upset tummies, and it's actually recommended if you have any autoimmune disease to avoid foods in the nightshade family in general. So because of all this, they were mostly grown as ornamentals and not used for food. The earliest recorded recipe was in a cookbook published in 1692, and now they're everywhere. They come sliced, diced, stewed, pasted, sauced. They're in BLTs, potato soup, pizza sauce, spaghetti sauce, ketchup. Speaking of ketchup, Heinz has a standard pour rate when they're testing their ketchup. If it pours too quickly, it's deemed too runny and it's rejected. Tomatoes are mostly grown as annuals, but in the right climates with frost-free growing conditions, they're actually perennials. There is a tomato tree growing in Orlando, Florida, Disney World, at the Epcot Center, and it actually set a record for the most harvested tomatoes in about a year's time. They harvested 32,000 tomatoes, and that roughly estimates to about 87 tomatoes per day. There's 2 types of tomatoes, indeterminate and determinate. An indeterminate tomato is your perennial tomatoes. They're vining, they will grow and grow and grow until frost takes them out, like the tree in Epcot Center. With indeterminate tomatoes, you most likely want to trellis them as they will continue to grow and grow. You can prune them to a single stem, or some people pinch them when they're young and it causes 2 main stems to grow. Then you pinch out the little suckers that grow in what I like to call the armpits of the plant. You keep pinching those out so that the growth is focused only on the 1 or 2 main stems. It's more tidy this way, and some people swear by it. Others say that pinching all those suckers out actually causes undue stress to the plant. You can also not pinch an indeterminate tomato, and it's going to get messy, but you're going to get a lot more tomatoes. If you are in a cooler zone and the season is nearing an end and maybe a frost is coming, you can actually pinch off that top stem, or if you have 2 stems, the top of the 2. It will cause them to stop growing, the vine will stop growing, and it will focus all of its energy on ripening the remaining fruits on the plant. A determinate tomato is your bush varieties that will grow to a determined height, usually 3 to 5 feet, and they pretty much put out all their tomatoes out at once. These are the plants that you would want to grow if you were interested in canning, preserving a bunch of tomatoes at once. So, is a tomato a veggie or a fruit? This has been a hot debate for many, many years. So in 1893, the Supreme Court ruled that tomatoes were actually veggies rather than fruit. They had previously been considered fruit and were actually, as a result, taxed less. But the Supreme Court decided that since we use them in a culinary standard sense as a vegetable, that they should now be considered a vegetable and therefore charged at a higher tax rate. There's an infamous quote that says, "Knowledge is knowing a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you shouldn't put it in a fruit salad." This was actually a quote by a rugby player who, during an interview, made a bet with a friend that said he could work that quote into the interview at any time, and he actually did, so he won the bet. Regardless of whether they're a fruit or a veggie, homegrown is best and organic is better. When you grow from seed at home, you have so many more varieties to pick from rather than just the couple that are at the grocery store or even the 4 or 5 plants that you might be able to get at a nursery. You can tap into those 10,000 varieties and find what works best for you. Store-bought varieties typically have a tougher skin, and they're actually bred that way so that they can withstand the travel time that they come from. They're tougher, and the flavor is kind of a casualty as a result. Contrary to popular belief, you don't actually want to let your tomatoes ripen on the vine. You should harvest them when it reaches what they call the breaker stage, and that's actually when your tomatoes will start showing a little bit of color. Then you want to go ahead and harvest them and put them on your countertop out of the sun to finish ripening indoors. Don't put them in the fridge because actually the cold temperatures will stop the ripening process. Just put them on your counter out of the sun. Tomatoes are extremely sensitive to watering fluctuations. And before a big rain, try and harvest as much as you can that's ready on your plants, because what happens is in a big rain, the plant will uptake all that rain and store it in the fruits, and it'll become too much for the fruits and their skin will actually burst. They can actually grow roots along the stem that's out of the ground. This is called root primordia, I think is how you say it, or advantageous roots. This is thought to happen if you have watered them too much or if it's just humid outside. These roots are pretty cool because if they touch dirt, they will actually grow into real roots. So if you have a very leggy plant, you can pinch off some of the leaves and bury the stem really deeply, and they'll just grow roots and it'll make a stronger, sturdier plant. It's worth mentioning that when you are messing with your tomato plants, if you're pinching them, pruning them, harvesting them, anything with the plants, it will stain your fingers a yellow-green color that will wash out in the sink, kind of like dirt. Like when I used to play softball and we had dirt worms in the sink in the shower. It kind of reminds me of that. Tomatoes have been grown in outer space, which I thought was cool. So another thing I thought was cool about tomatoes is there's an event in Spain that has been going on since around 1945, and it is actually the world's biggest food fight. Thousands of people gather to throw tomatoes at each other for fun. It's not a competition, it's just literally for fun. In 2013, they actually had to start ticketing people in order to keep the participant numbers down. They capped it at 20,000, whereas before 40,000, 50,000 people would show up. That's insane. It is held on the last Wednesday of August annually. So if you're in Spain, you might want to check it out. Okay, plant number 2, cucumbers. They're actually a lot like tomatoes that I discovered in my research. They are native to India and have been cultivated for over 3,000 years. They are also 95% water and contain a lot of nutrients and antioxidants. They are part of the cucurbit family, which includes watermelon, pumpkins, and squash. They are botanically considered a fruit, even though we consider them a vegetable. The largest recorded cucumber was 6 feet long and weighed 154 pounds. I am 5'1", so there's a cucumber out there that was a foot taller than me. What? They are generally categorized as slicing, pickling, or there are some specialty cucumbers. They were actually once considered poisonous just like tomatoes. Cucumbers have also been grown in space just like tomatoes. They are a creeping vine and can and should be trellised. They can actually be pruned just like a tomato plant to have a single stem. And there's actually suckers that grow in the armpits of the cucumber plant that you can pinch out as well. They have large, rough, hairy leaves that protect the cucumbers from the sun. And with a cucumber plant, you need to harvest often. Once the fruit starts producing, if you leave one on the plant, it will actually cause the plant to shut down and think that its job's done. So check them daily. Okay, there are 3 types of cucumber plants: monoecious, ganoecious, and parthenocarpic. A monoecious cucumber will produce both female and male flowers and require pollination to produce fruit. You will mostly get male flowers with a monoecious variety. According to the Johnny's website, for every 1 female flower, you will get 10 male flowers. So a little bit of a slower production of fruit. A ganoecious variety will produce female flowers, which is great for fruit production. However, you still need a monoecious variety close by because you need that male flower to pollinate the ganoecious varieties. Parthenocarpic cucumbers are really cool because they don't require pollination at all, and they are female flowers, so high production without the need of any kind of pollinators. These cucumbers are mostly seedless, which makes them a little more expensive to produce, but they can be grown inside of structures like greenhouses and hoop houses because they don't require bugs to get in and around them. Speaking of growing structures, I thought this was cool. There was apparently a Roman emperor who demanded a cucumber on his plate every night, and as a result, his servants had to struggle really hard to keep up with the demand. So they actually created the earliest structures to grow cucumbers in so that they could grow enough to accommodate his demand. Some cool uses of cucumbers that I found interesting were apparently a slice can clean a bathroom and defog a steamy mirror after a shower. I have not tried this, but if you have, let me know if it works. A slice of cucumber can be held to the roof of your mouth for 30-ish seconds, and apparently it kills the bacteria in your mouth, eliminating bad breath. So you don't need an after dinner mint on a date. The term cool as a cucumber actually comes from cucumbers' abilities to cool the temperature of blood. There's studies that show that inside of a cucumber is actually around 20 degrees cooler than the outside of the cucumber. This is why you'll find cucumber slices used in spas, because they can cool the skin and reduce puffiness. You can also use cucumber slices to soothe sunburned skin. But maybe the coolest thing I found when researching cucumbers was that you can purchase molds, like plastic molds, to put around the cucumber as they grow. They don't care. They'll keep growing and form into the shape of the mold. And I just thought that was crazy. Plant number 3, tulips. My grandpa actually was from Holland, and I've seen so many pictures, and I've always been very interested in tulips. They are native to Central America. There are over 3,500 named varieties categorized within 16 different groups. They come in every color you can imagine except the color blue. There are even striped varieties. They are phototropic, which means if they are laying down flat, they will find their way to the sun. Tulip bulbs require cold. It's actually called winter chill hours. And they need at least 12 to 16 hours of below freezing temperatures. Some require more like 20, so watch when you're buying what the requirements are. If they don't get enough chill hours, they will have short stems when they grow. So in a cooler zone, you will want to plant your tulip bulbs in the fall to give them enough time to accumulate their chill hours. And in a warmer zone, you can actually purchase pre-chilled tulip bulbs. There's different levels of how many hours they've already been chilled for you. The planting depth is going to be roughly 3 times the size of the bulb, which is typically a 4 to 8 inch deep planting. I thought it was cool that you can plant tulip bulbs super close together. If you're planting a lot of tulips, or if you just want to get it done quick, you can literally just dump them in there, even them out to a single layer, cover them up, and remember, they're phototropic. They will find their way up towards the light. You want to plant them in a sunny, well-drained area and hit them with a lot of water when you plant them. Not enough water at planting time or when they come out of the soil in the spring can result in short stems. They like water. Tulips can also be grown indoors in water hydroponically. So I was surprised to learn that flower farmers, when they're growing tulips, they consider them an annual. I had always thought that tulips were perennials and will grow and grow and grow forever and ever and come back each year. But they're actually mostly considered annuals. And as soon as the tulip gets to the stage called color cracking, when you can just start to see what color it is, flower farmers actually harvest them at that stage. They will pull the whole plant up, bulb and all. You don't snip them and clip, you pull the whole thing out. And by doing that, you actually get 5 to 6 inches more of stem that was buried in the ground. But because they pull them up and then trim off the bulb from the cut flower, that bulb will not regrow, so you can't replant it. Cut tulips in an arrangement will actually continue to grow towards the light, which I thought was crazy. So if you're using tulips in a flower arrangement, typically you start them out a little shorter because they're going to keep growing. And if they keep growing and get a little crazy, just take them out, trim off the end, and put them back in there. There's something called tulip fire. It's a bacterial disease that causes tulips to develop scorched spots on their leaves, and it looks like they've been burned, hence the name tulip fire. If you experience this, pull them up, throw them away. Don't compost them. Throw them in the trash. And then don't plant tulips in the same part of your yard for 3 to 7 years. Something else cool I learned about tulips was in Holland in around 1634, there was something called tulip mania, where tulips became so popular and the rich wanted all the tulips and they became more and more expensive and more people wanted them, and they started buying them on credit and promises to pay later. And by the end of 1637, the market crashed. Plant number 4, carrots. They are native to Afghanistan, are 88% water, and are botanically a veggie. They are part of the Apiaceae family. This is the family that includes celery, dill, fennel, parsley, and parsnips. It was originally wild and nothing like the carrots that we eat today. They're actually a descendant of the beautiful flower Queen Anne's lace. The color was most likely purple or yellow, not orange, but due to genetic mutations over the years and some selective breeding, we now mostly consider carrots orange. But you still can purchase carrots that are purple, yellow, red, black, white. The biggest carrot on record was 22 pounds, 7 ounces, and the longest was 20 feet by 5.9 inches. What? Carrots are a biennial, which means they will produce flowers and seeds in the second year of growing. Those flowers are beautiful, which pollinators absolutely love because it's easy for them to land on. I thought this was interesting. The seeds of celery are so small that 2,000 seeds will fit into 1 teaspoon. Carrots have the highest natural sugar content of all veggies except for beets. Carrot cake, anyone? The first carrot cake recipe actually was published in a cookbook in 1827. Carrots can be left in the ground to overwinter once they are fully mature, and the sugars in the carrot will actually concentrate more during this cooler period, making them taste a lot better. They contain insane amounts of beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A. This is good for healthy eyes, skin, and bones. And it's actually better for you if you cook them than eating them raw, When you cook them, you get 40% of the beta carotene out of them and only 4% when they are raw. Garden grown carrots are tastier and fresher because when they sit on the grocery store shelf, the sugars will actually convert to fiber, and that makes them tougher and just less flavorful. Garden grown carrots are pretty cool because if they hit a rock or any kind of obstacle, they will fork. They're still totally edible. They're just not the beautiful, perfect taproot that you see in the store. So you will not find funky looking carrots in the store. Actually, baby carrots were a result of these funky carrots. There was a farmer that was tired of throwing away these funky carrots that you couldn't give to a grocery store because they weren't perfect. So him and his son came up with a way to basically whittle down those messed up carrots into tiny carrots that they sold as baby carrots. So nowadays they are rolled over blades within these big metal vats, and it produces the baby carrots that we're used to. That's horse. I fixed it. It's late and the lights went off on my timers, which, by the way, get timers for your grow lights. They're amazing. Where were we? Oh yeah, carrots. Raw carrots are abrasive enough to remove plaque and tartar buildup, and for this reason they're actually a great dog treat too. Carrots were the first root vegetable that were commercially canned. Eating too many carrots can actually turn your skin yellow or orangish, and it's called carotenemia, I think is how you say it. It's totally harmless. It won't hurt you. I mean, it might look weird, but it won't hurt you, and can be reversed by laying off the rabbit food. Actually, speaking of rabbits, rabbits don't really like carrots as much as we were led to believe. They are actually more apt to eat the leaves that grow from the carrots and not dig up the actual carrots. So apparently in a film called It Happened One Night, a 1934 film, star Clark Gable was standing by a fence munching on a carrot in, I guess, one of the most famous scenes. So reportedly, the creators of Bugs Bunny loved this movie so much that they based the character of Bugs Bunny off of Clark Gable's character and mirrored this swagger in their cartoon and gave Bugs Bunny this persona and love of carrots. This kind of led us all to believe that bunnies loved carrots. And I also read that Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny, didn't actually even like carrots in real life. Okay, plant number 5, sunflowers. This one's my favorite. They are actually the state flower of Kansas, and they're native to North America. They're actually developed for food, medicine, dye, and oil. There are perennial and annual varieties. They are heat-loving, but you'd actually be surprised how early you can plant them in the spring, so then you can succession plant them throughout the growing season and get plants all the way up until fall. They have a long taproot and generally very short days to maturity. Some are even 50 to 60 days. They can be single stem or branching. Colors include yellow, orange, red, whites, bicolors. Flower farmers usually grow the light colors in early summer and wait to grow the moodier, darker colors in fall. The closer that you space sunflowers when you grow them, the smaller the flower head will be. So if you're growing cut flowers, you might want to plant them closer together so you have a manageable size of a sunflower. If you're growing them in your yard for impact and for the birds, maybe consider a branching sunflower that produces many, many sunflowers. Some sunflowers contain pollen and some are pollenless. Some sunflowers produce seeds and some are sterile and do not. And there are 2 seed types of sunflowers. One is oil producing and one is non-oil producing. The oil producing seeds are generally your most farmed, and they are used for oil production for cooking, cosmetics, soaps, and candles. And I even use them for birdseed. These will have a solid black shell. Non-oil seeds are what we typically use for human consumption. They are the striped shells that you're used to seeing like in the baseball field. These seeds can also be used to make sun butter, which is a good alternative to peanut butter if you have a peanut allergy. If the plant is left whole in the winter, the seeds will feed the birds and they will actually host sites for bugs. The taproot can also stay over winter and become organic matter in your soil. Or the thick stem of a sunflower you can chop down and you can actually use it as kindling in your fire pits. The height of sunflowers range from dwarf varieties that can be 1 to 2 feet tall all the way up to 16 feet. The tallest on record was actually grown in August of 2014 by a German dude and was 30 feet tall, 1 inch. What? Like tomatoes and cucumbers, sunflowers have also been grown in space. Something I thought was cool about sunflowers is they actually have a circadian rhythm, which is defined as a physical or behavioral change that an organism experiences throughout a 24-hour period. So a young plant will follow the sun throughout the day from east to west as the sun sets, and then reset itself to face the east at night. This will occur daily until the sunflower matures, and then a mature sunflower will always face east. Sunflowers' long taproots can actually reach really deep and absorb radiation and toxic metals like lead, arsenic, and uranium. They are called hyperaccumulators and have been used to clean up after a nuclear disaster like Chernobyl. I have also read about farmers planting a field of sunflowers on new land to use those taproots to soak up any bad juju before they start planting their crops. The coolest thing I learned about sunflowers was that the head of the flower is actually thousands of individual teeny tiny little flowers called disc flowers. The flowers around the edge of the sunflower are called ray petals, and they can be single, double, or even kind of a fluffy teddy bear variety. And what's super cool is the disc flowers, remember these are tiny little individual flowers, are arranged in a distinct spiral pattern found in nature called the Fibonacci spiral. Using the Fibonacci mathematical sequence is literally a pattern where each number in the sequence is the sum of the 2 previous numbers. This is special because it is a self-similar curve which keeps its shape at all scales, which you can imagine spiraling out forever and ever, never changing its pattern. Other examples of this are found in shells and pine cones and even the Milky Way. I don't know about you, but I think it's kind of cool to think of the Milky Way in the head of a sunflower. Well, there you have it. A bajillion reasons to like all 5 of these plants. I think my favorite was the spiral pattern on the sunflowers because I'm a dork for numbers and patterns. Let me know what the coolest thing you learned was, or if there was anything that you know that I missed. And if you're still struggling with the winter blues, waiting for spring like me, check out this video for 9 tips to make it through the cold weather. So whether it's veggies, flowers, or yourself, dude, just grow something. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. I made it. I did it. My legs are asleep. I need help getting up. I wonder if they would hear me yell. You can also not pinch a the largest recorded foot's asleep, foot's asleep. I can't walk 'cause my foot's asleep. And then they'll produce seeds. A very short days to jerk. Oh my god, why is it so hard? It's my favorite part and I'm butchering it. How do I say this? Hang on, I have to consult Google.